Krishna Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manavesam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutam Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sarajatam Savadana Raghunatam Sajivam Sarvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhantikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Veshakamine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome to our Friday discussion. So, day after tomorrow, we'll be celebrating the very auspicious Ram Navami, the appearance day of Lord Ramchandra. So, we'll be having nice discussions on Sunday on the glories of Lord Ram. So, as not to steal from that discussion, we'll focus today's discussion on this glorious Bhavad Gita. But we have so much to learn. It is said that we follow the words of Lord Krishna, the words spoken in this Bhavad Gita. And we follow the mood of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the mood of how he practiced devotional service. And we follow the actions of Lord Ram. So they give us very perfect examples of how to find perfection in life. As we know, we need multiple angles of instruction. One instruction is not enough. And so the Lord, being so merciful, appears over and over and over again to guide us in the process of devotional service. And so in the current era of such turmoil and turbulence, we can look back to the era of Lord Ramchandra and see how, by perfect rule and perfect leadership, exemplified leadership, society can become perfect, and how one can even transcend the influence of time. And meaning that though Lord Ramchandra was ruling in the era of Treta Yuga, his rule was so exceptional and so perfect that the condition of the material world at the time was like in Satyuga. He could trump time by his exemplary leadership. And we just can imagine and dream if today's rulers were leading under such instructions that were Ram led for us. And those instructions are voluminous and so many in detail, but the principle being, how to live a righteous life. And if we do, even a small section of society, Srila Prabhupada says, if just a small portion of society becomes Krishna conscious, the whole world will be uplifted. It doesn't take much. It's so powerful and so transcendental. So I look forward to celebrating Ram Navami day after tomorrow. Blessed it is on Sunday, so we can celebrate in extensive ways, spending all day relishing and learning. So we'll have many wonderful programs on that day, so don't miss this very important opportunity. And Ram Navami is very important in our ISKCON in that we see many of our temples they're all inaugurated and opened on this glorious day, including our very dear Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan and many others. So it's a very auspicious day. So look forward to celebrating. As I said, we'll be discussing some different topics and pastimes on Sunday. So we'll not discuss that today, but I will be discussing on Sunday. So last week we began introduction to chapter 15, Yoga of the Supreme Person. This chapter is called Purushottam Yoga. We studied this chapter in great detail during Purushottam Mas. Many devotees take a vow or a vlog to read this chapter every day. It's a very nice vow to make, because this chapter gives us the clues as how to escape the material world. And we know if we were stuck in a prison and no way out, and then somebody said, psst, psst, I know how to get out. I know how to get out. And it was a safe way out, and an assured way out. How enthusiastic we would be to hear that knowledge. And how enthusiastic would we be, or I would say how foolish it would be if we heard that knowledge, but then didn't follow it. Would we consider that very intelligent? We know there's a way out of this prison. We know it's safe. We know it's secure. We're suffering in the prison cell, crying and lamenting, this isn't right, this isn't good, and yet we don't follow. Would we consider that very intelligent? Well, that is, in essence, what many of us do, at least speaking for myself. Because Krishna is repeatedly telling us, this material world, it is a prison house, Dukhalayam Shashvatam. So difficult. But we're feeling, no, I'm finding happiness. It's just, we have to wait for this to pass, wait till the summer comes, it'll be so nice. Or wait till this election comes and these results, or wait till my sports team wins. We give so many things. But we find repeatedly distress. And Krishna is giving us the surefire path to get out. Just surrender it to me. That's it. He doesn't give this complicated formula. He says, just think of me, manmana, mad bhakto, become my devotee. Offer your homages to me. Your namaskaras, just offer your obeisances. Not so difficult. But we make it difficult. Due to the false ego, due to conditioning. And so it is no different than a prisoner suffering in a prison cell with the known path out and doesn't take it. That is, in essence, what holds us back from taking to Krishna consciousness fully. And fully surrendering to Krishna. So instead we surrender to the idea that it's not too bad in here. Maybe it's not so bad. Maybe tomorrow will get better. That's what we're doing. So Krishna speaks this chapter for one main purpose. To show us the nature of this world and how to get out from it. That is the essence of this chapter. And towards the end of this chapter, he speaks about how we are dependent on Krishna in everything. Down to, we just honored nice prasadam. But actually that prasadam even cannot even enter the body without these digestive enzymes in the stomach to break down the food. And where those enzymes come from, Krishna says, I am that. I am that fire of digestion. We know when our digestion, the fire of our digestion is off, what is our state of consciousness? We are miserable. And nothing is working, we're weak, or nothing. Krishna is even that, the ability to even digest our foods. So we have so much dependence on the Lord. And by understanding that, then we can actually take this message and understand, okay, He is our path. So there's a very sweet chapter. So he opened this chapter with this example of the banyan tree. Right? And so what is the banyan tree exemplifying? What is it symbolizing?
Spreading out.
He uses imperishable banyan tree. Why is he talking about a banyan tree? What did he tell us it is symbolizing? Huh? The material world? Which banyan tree? The one standing straight up or the one upside down?
Reflection.
The reflection. Right? The upside down banyan tree. It's quite ironic, right? That this world is actually completely upside down. Things that are good, we consider bad, not worth our time. And things that are bad, we consider our life's pursuit. So that's the upside down material. Okay, so this banyan tree, it represents the material world. And there are some very important instructions that we get from this banyan tree. We talked one last time that why is it that we hold on to our material attachments? What is holding us back from releasing and becoming free of all our material attachments? Why do we hold on to it?
In the fear of losing something.
We're in the fear of losing something. Right? So if I give up this, am I going to pick up something else that is of lesser value? Right? If I'm convinced that by giving up this I'm going to get something of higher value, then we'll try. Right? I give this very simple example. If you have a $5 bill in your hand, somebody offers you a $20 bill, you don't hesitate to exchange. You're exchanging lower value for higher value. It's easy. You don't need to be a world-class economist to make that decision, right? Even a 5-year-old child will see $5 equals this much candy, 20 equals this much candy, done. Right? So it's simple. So in essence, we are holding on to our material attachments, though Krishna is saying, you abandon everything. Because we are fear we're going to lose something by coming to Krishna consciousness. In essence, right? If we're honest with ourselves, that is it. We fear that by giving up this activity, I'm going to get less happiness from whatever I replace it with. So Krishna, by using this example, gives us some very important conclusion. Because we use this reflection, right? If the material world is a reflection, it means that whatever we see in a reflection exists where? In the spiritual world. In the original object. Right? You cannot see something in a reflection that doesn't exist in the original object. You can't. You can't look in the mirror and see a third ear unless you have a third ear. Right? The mirror will never show anything that isn't in the reflection. So that means whatever it is we're finding happiness in this material world, where does that exact activity exist in its pure form? Where? In the spiritual world. It can't, if it's a reflection, if we're experiencing it here, whatever it is here has to be in its original form in the spiritual world. Otherwise it cannot be present. So this gives, if we have some faith in that, then we can realize whatever it is we're trying to enjoy, those material attachments we're gripping onto so tightly. If we remember back to this, we can remember, wait a minute, whatever it is I'm finding pleasure, actually that activity exists in its pure original form in the spiritual world. And that must give so much more happiness. And we gave the example last time. You might get some pleasure in seeing the Taj Mahal through its reflection. But how does that pleasure compare to seeing it, straight on, face to face? Is it the same? More or less? You're going to see more. So similarly, we're just seeing these reflective activities, trying to engage in them, but their original activities exist in the spiritual world. So whatever we give up in this material world, we should have full faith. We're going to gain so much more. But it takes some process. So this detachment from the material world, this is the key theme of these first 5-6 verses. Maybe the first 6 verses is to detach from the material world. And we see we're already in the 15th chapter of Bhavad Gita. Right? Krishna has spoken about everything already. You're not this body or spirit soul. You're not the doer. Krishna says, I'm not the doer. Krishna gives everything in this world is one of my energies. You can never be, detached from me. This material energy is difficult, but by surrendering to me, you can get over it. This is the king of all knowledge, this devotional service. And the great Mahatmas, the great souls, what do? They always are chanting my names and enjoying and relishing. And he said that the result of this devotional service is to shanti chalamanti, this bliss, and he goes on, giving us so much detail. And now we're in the 15th chapter, and he's back to detaching from the material world. Why? Because we grip onto these attachments so tightly. Right? So we still have to find ways. So these next few verses give us some clue. Let's read the second verse and discuss a little bit. Can we read the second verse? You can raise the translation too, no problem.
The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the 3 modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. Perfect. The description of the banyan tree is further explained here. Its branches spread in all directions. In the lower parts, there are variegated manifestations of living entities, human beings, animals, horses, cows, dogs, cats, etc. These are situated on the lower parts of the branches, whereas on the upper parts are higher forms of living entities, the demigods, Gandharvas, and many other higher species of life. As a tree is nourished by water, so this tree is nourished by the 3 modes of material nature. Sometimes we find that a tract of land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes a tract is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionately greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. The twigs of the tree are considered to be the sense objects. By development of the different modes of nature, we develop different senses, and by the senses, we enjoy different varieties of sense objects. The tips of the branches are the senses, the ears, nose, eyes, etc., which are attached to the enjoyment of different sense objects. The twigs are sound, form, touch, and so on, the sense objects. The subsidiary roots are attachments and aversions, which are byproducts of different varieties of suffering and sense enjoyment. The tendencies toward piety and impiety are considered to develop from these secondary roots, which spread in all directions. The real root is from Brahmalok, and the other roots are in the human planetary systems. After one enjoys the results of virtuous activities in the upper planetary system, he comes down to this earth and renews his karma, or fruitive activities for promotion. This planet of human beings is considered the field of activities.
So Krishna is further describing this banyan tree with its branches extending downward and upward, nourished by the modes of material nature. So one thing we see, that when we get to a banyan tree, it's very large, right? And when you see a banyan tree, you see these branches going seemingly down and up and in all directions. So this gives us some glimpse into, one, the complexity of the material world. But we have some knowledge in the material world that there are higher levels in the material world than there are lower levels. Right? We have the 14 planetary systems, and we know that in the higher planetary systems there is an advanced material form of life, and in the lower planetary systems there's a more degraded standard of life. But in the end, how does Krishna describe all gradations of life in the material world? You remember what he says in the 8th chapter? Dukhalayam Shashvatam. He says, from the highest to the lowest, it is all misery. Full of misery. This is the experience in the material world. So even at the higher branches, the higher planetary systems, it is all misery, right? So Krishna is explaining that these different material world has different levels, right? Now we see that there are different living entities exploring in the material world. We have what's the highest form of life? What's the highest species of life? The human species, right? And then we see many, animal species down to some plant species, aquatics, 8.4 million species of life. But actually, all of them are centered around having the single goal for all species of life. Happiness. To find some happiness. So all species of life they're finding. And so there are so many varieties of branches in a banyan tree. Like that. There are so many varieties of pursuits of sense enjoyment. And we see, we hear this explanation in a very crude way, but it's reality. That, a fly is in bliss, enjoying, a pile of stool. So happy. And that happiness is not different than the happiness we get, trying to enjoy our senses with some foodstuffs or hearing some nice thing. The pleasure actually is the same. What's the only difference? The fly has acquired a certain type of senses such that it finds stool to be very pleasurable and enjoyable. And we have acquired some certain senses that we find other objects to be pleasurable. But in the end, what is the ultimate result? There's no difference, actually, when you really think about it. And we know, if we try to enjoy this world indiscriminately, meaning regardless of what, regulations, shastra guides, we just want to enjoy how we feel. Eat what I want to eat, see what I want to see, drink what I want to drink, eat what I want to eat, hear what I want to hear. What is our destination? We try to enjoy that way. Lower species. We're going to keep going lower and lower because we'll endure sinful activities. The attraction to enjoy that way becomes so strong that even if we know it's wrong, we'll still do it. Driven by this lust, this I know I shouldn't do this, but we cannot control. And by that we'll incur sinful activities. And sinful activities means sinful reactions. And ultimately we'll become that fly, still trying to enjoy. But due to degraded senses, we'll try to enjoy. But actually this whole world, ultimately, that's the reality. We don't like to sometimes, that's being, negative, or actually, when we analyze, it's the reality. So, Krishna is warning us. There are many, many sense objects, many twigs on this banyan tree. There are many forms of things to hear in this material world. To smell, to touch, all these senses have so many opportunity for engagement. But ultimately, from the highest tree branch on this banyan tree to the lowest, you must remember it's all reflection. It's all the illusory happiness that exists. So we must work to ultimately detach, and that's going to become the key understanding that Krishna is making us come to, because Prabhupada writes towards the end of the purport, even if you achieve, the higher branches of this material world, what happens when we go to the upper planetary systems? Success? Perfection of life? What do we find?
We'll come back again.
We'll come back again. Prabhupada writes, after one enjoys the results of virtuous activity in the upper planetary systems, he comes down to earth and then renews his karma. Which means we then risk the possibility of going back down. So this material world becomes a very, very difficult place to exist. And as devotees practicing Krishna consciousness, we have experience of this, right? We come to take to spiritual life, and we've abandoned so many different activities. And as Krishna said in the second chapter, Param Drishva Nivartate. That's by this higher taste one does. Right? But still we linger on, we hold on to some of those residual material activities. And our acharyas warn that is still very, very dangerous, because ultimately the senses become so strong that we can be pulled away from even our devotional life, by these last threads of material attachments. So we must be very disciplined and very careful in understanding our position here in this material world, in this banyan tree, and work to detach from it. Otherwise, this attachment to Krishna consciousness will not happen. Prabhupada will write, I think in the next verse, if I'm not mistaken, in a purport, that devotional service means detachment from material activities. That becomes the key theme of this section of that verse. So the one other comment I'll talk about is, this detachment from the material world. So what does detachment from the material world actually mean?
Attachment to Krishna.
Attachment to Krishna. Okay. So does it mean then?
When we have like higher taste, we will get attached to the lower taste.
Okay. So when we attach to the higher things, we'll detach naturally to lower things, right? But what does actual detachment mean? Does it mean I won't have anything material? I won't touch anything material? What does detachment actually mean?
Using it. Using it in the service.
Using what in service of Krishna?
In
Everything,
material
Anything.
possessions.
Yeah, you're going to say something?
No problem.
Yeah. So this is detachment. Detachment doesn't mean that, I get the paycheck from the office and I tear it up and throw it in the trash. I'm detached. That's foolishness. That's fallible by a false renunciation. Detachment means we use the material world, but we use it for Krishna's pleasure, not our own pleasure. So we use whatever facilities we have in the material world, but we use it for Krishna's pleasure. And so the devotee, realizing the purport of the verses coming up in this chapter, they understand Krishna is the source of all of my abilities. Whatever ability I have, it can be used for Krishna's service. He has given it, so it must be used for his service. So actually, Prabhupada writes here, attachment and aversion. Right? Attachment means I'm attached. Aversion, I don't want, no. This kind of hatred. They're actually both forms of attachment. When I'm averse to the material world, actually it's a form of pride, ego, in a very subtle way. Because I think that whatever I'm averse to is disconnected from Krishna. Right? So there's a lack of recognition that it is all Krishna's arrangement, all Krishna's facilities. So in that case, what can be the scope of aversion? Attachment. No, one should understand, no, this is all Krishna's property. Thus it should be used in his service. So to reject the facilities of the material world, to have aversion to it, is also a form of selfishness. Very subtle. Right? Sometimes we think, this detachment, okay, I'm getting to an elevated state. But actually, we can understand that it is also a form of not understanding, our position in relation to Krishna. Just like, if I have some ability, whatever that ability may be, if I don't use it in Krishna's service, I'm basically making a conscious choice thinking, this is my ability, and I'm choosing not to use it. Whereas if one recognizes, wait a minute, Krishna has given me the ability, then I have a responsibility. I have an obligation. I feel a sense of obligation to use it in Krishna's service. Understand? It's very subtle. But if I have some ability, and if I think it's mine, then I may choose how to use it. But if I really understand and have faith that Krishna has given me this, then it naturally creates this feeling of obligation. I must use it in Krishna's service. I must use it. And the hardest part is using that ability. When some result comes, what do we often think? I did it. I did it. But who did it? Krishna did it. And then it gets even more so. Sometimes out of fear of not wanting that feeling of I did it, we don't do it. I don't know if I'm making sense. I know it's very subtle. But it's these aversions also become forms of attachment. Right? So if we understand, wait a minute, this Krishna has given these facilities, then they must be used in his service. But all along the way, one realizes who is the doer. And then one becomes, even in their service, they become truly agnostic. Meaning, they have no attachment or aversion to any service. Not, I like this, I don't like this. It comes to a very elevated platform. we often start, we do things we like, but ultimately, if we see, that mood we were discussing in Shikshashtakam of this surrender, that Srimati Radharani speaks, that her service, if her service is to be far away from Krishna, if that gives Krishna happiness, great. And if her service is to be close, and that gives Krishna happiness, great. But the focus is not what I want, it is what Krishna wants. So, by understanding, this, who is the source of, our ability to serve, who is the source of everything we have in this material world, we can become free of both the attachment and the aversions. Both of them are equally limiting for us, or challenging, or obstacles for us. And we try to make progress. So, easier said than done, but at least we can work towards that end on both attachments and aversions. This is so a little bit on verse 2. So, any comments, discussion, questions today?
Yeah, the last thing.
Hmm?
The one you were explaining, the detachment. Able to understand the concept of it, but can't able to apply in practicality. Like, how is it? Would you be able to give more examples of the way do we do that?
A practical example might be, I was discussing recently with a devotee, and in a very sweet way, they were doing a service specifically of cooking breakfast for Krishna, and he was having a desire. I wish I could cook Rajbhog for the devotee. And so, I just made a comment. I said, but remember, breakfast is one of the most important meals. Because Krishna's been fasting for over 12 hours. From 7 p.m. night before, had a snack in the evening, small snack in the morning. This is his first. Think how enthusiastic Krishna must be to eat, milk. Everybody, I never really thought about it that way. Because Rajbhog is coming right after breakfast, and then dinner is coming. So like the breakfast is like the one meal before the long. But he thought of this simple breakfast. I want to make something more complicated. So the point is, in our devotional service, sometimes we consider one service to be better or higher than another. But actually, all services are absolute. They're all an opportunity to please Krishna, right? And so, the attachment and aversion, we try to bring ourselves to a point of being happy in any service. Whatever service we can get to, we consider it our greatest fortune, our greatest opportunity to render. Because the focus is Krishna's happiness. And what's interesting, when we approach it that way, we actually then experience the rasa of seva. The taste of bhakti comes because the more we surrender our own desires, the more actually purity there is in service. And then the more taste will come. So we'll actually begin to enjoy our seva even more. So the less, we try to clamor for, this service or that service, but instead take any service. We'll find our happiness. Because we realize it too, right? Sometimes in the service we do, we find these ups and downs, right? that is simply just our own impurity. It's natural, it's going to happen. We're coming from a conditioned state and we're working to purify. But we can diagnose that as having some attachment or aversion. You know? So again, it doesn't mean that we should run away from the services we like and only do services we don't like. That's not the purport here. The purport here is we should enjoy and run to the services we like, and we should enjoy and run to the services we so-called don't like, and see how approaching that service in the mood of Krishna's pleasure, how much actually happiness we'll get from it. And I remember my own personal experience many years ago. One thing I never enjoyed doing, at least in the house, is washing dishes. Like, I don't like it. I've never, from a childhood, it's been this bane in me. So I remember I heard one devotee speaking this way, and so I made a commitment, and for like, I don't know, almost a year, a long time, I went and I washed pots in the temple. And it became such an attachment. I was having so much fun that I would be praying driving to the temple that there would be like a pot room full of pots. But because I was like, I'm gonna try this. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. And so to take that service that I didn't like to do, and I saw that Krishna actually was reciprocating. So you can try it in a practical manner. Something we're not so fond of, trying it, and you might be surprised. And so this attachment and aversion, it happens in our application of service, and sometimes we don't get this service that I really wanted, and we feel dissatisfied. So we feel, okay, Krishna wanted me to do another service. Krishna is the supreme controller. If he wanted me to do this service, do you think anybody can get in the way of it? No. Right? So dropping this, I'll do service if I can do this. Again, it doesn't mean we should not, pursue the things that we enjoy, that we get experience with. Mataji loves making flower garlands. She makes them 20. It doesn't mean, okay, I'm not making garlands anymore. No, that is not the purport. We should do the services that we enjoy. But also at times when it comes, when there's something maybe off of our normal thing, try to enjoy that also. Try to enjoy it and see what your experience is. You'll find the more we surrender our own desires, the more actually the taste of devotional service comes. Right? All service is beneficial, but this is a way to. Is that your question? Any other questions or comments? Okay. And if not, we chant. Thank you very much. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava.